The opinions expressed by guests on Town Hall, a Black Queer podcast, are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the podcast host, Bob the Drag Queen and Peppermint, the podcast production team, or the organization Black Queer Town Hall. Each participant is chosen for their unique perspective relevant to the theme of their featured episode. While we strive to provide a platform for diverse voices and narratives, individual opinions may vary, and listeners are encouraged to engage critically and respectfully with the content and the people presented.
Polyamory is the composite of my best choices. I feel happy in this arrangement. I feel pleased. I feel at home. And, my partners tell me they're happy. They seem happy. I'm happy. We're not hurting anybody. So,
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Town Hall, a Black Queer podcast, the podcast where we journey through a theme by sharing stories, music, poetry, and art of varying depth and hilarity. Today's episode explores the world of polyamory.
Yeah, honey, listen, love knows no boundaries. And for many in our community, that means embracing multiple connections simultaneously, all at the same time. Everything, everywhere, all at once. And the first part of this special two-part episode, we're going to be peeling back the layers of polyamorous relationships, examining the joys, the challenges, and the misconceptions
Oh,
surrounding them.
gosh.
Polyamory is like, is it trending?
Well, I
Like,
think, I mean, I
what's
don't
up with
know.
it?
I certainly hear more about polyamory than I did, 10, 20 years ago. But of course, I was in a different place. And the word, I can't say the word is brand new, but the word is definitely newer. Back in the day, I think it started as like, we've all heard of like swingers and like key parties or whatever. And like,
Or
yeah.
polygamy?
Well, yes, we heard about polygamists for sure. I think polyamory obviously is derived from it, but and maybe we should maybe while I'm getting this out, you should give us the definitions,
Mm.
if you can find them. But
Oh,
I
okay,
of course there was
for sure.
polygamists, but what I'm saying is like the model of one man, one woman in a marriage is something that we've all heard of. We've all seen that. We've seen it in film and television. It's the most popular thing that's been served to us. Not that it's the oldest or primary way, it's probably the newest. But what I did hear growing up is like swingers. Like I heard the term swingers, which meant that they
Yeah.
play around with other people. And I know that's different than just polyamory, which you'll give us the definition. But like, so maybe this same action and the same sort of intent in terms of having either an open marriage or having a sort of polyamorous lifestyle. Um, maybe that's not so new, but just it seems real fine tuned to the point where there's a lot of people who are like no longer focused on like marriage, like monogamy and marriage as a goal. And so when that happens, then obviously people still need relationships. So I guess it's just a new way to kind of a new norm for certain people.
Yeah. So, you know, so polygamy is a term that's a little bit dated, but it still is used in a lot of spaces. But the real difference between polygamy and polyamory is just typically marriage. The marriage is the part that makes it the difference between polygamy and polyamory. And polyamory, according to the Oxford Languages Dictionary, is characterized by or involved in the practice of engaging in multiple romantic and typically sexual relationships with the consent of all the people involved. So if you just cheating, you're not polyamorous. if you if you if you got two girlfriends and your girlfriends don't know, that doesn't make y'all polyamorous. That just makes you a cheater, okay? Um, in polygamy, the definition of polygamy is the practice or custom of having more than one wife or husband at the same time. So it certainly seems like the big difference. It's like the difference between a boyfriend and a
Yeah, and
girlfriend,
I think
and
that
polygamy seems to specifically for
I think, and so the
marriage.
workaround for people, because it's not in the United States, it's not legal to be in the United States. It's not necessarily legal to be married to more than one person at a time. And so I have some friends um, who are polyamorous. They're in a she called it one of our producers called it a triad, a thruple, a plural relationship.
A triad is when there are 3 people and
Oh,
they're all
okay.
dating each other. So if
It's
you
not a
so
triad
if one
then.
person's dating 2 different people, that's not
But
a
they
triad.
invited us to their
That's a
wedding,
polycule.
and it was
A polycule is when, like, the polycule is, like, the people all in because even a triad is technically a polycule, but a polycule is, like, when all the people involved in a polyamorous dynamic that are all linked to each other.
got it. So we got invited to their wedding, and it was obviously not something that they could legally do. Like only two of the people. There could only be one couple like legally married in the group. But we went to their like sort of
Yeah.
ceremony where they all were getting married, even though like I guess on paper only two of the people were in one marriage. Um,
Did they reveal to the room who was getting
I
the
don't
legal
know.
marriage?
No, they
That
didn't
sounds so
reveal it in
interesting to
that
me.
moment. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
Maybe
I'm
the
sure that
friends
there's
and stuff
people who
down the line, but
know
not, like, at
who
the
you
ceremony.
know.
They
Yeah,
weren't at the ceremony like,
they
"That's
didn't
the
want to
real
do
one.
that because
That's the
that
this
would
one."
be like, welcome to our wedding, but that one's the
Messy.
lower one. No, 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 that would be messy. Oh, does that mean I don't gotta give you a gift? I'll return it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was interesting, but yeah, it's I think about it all the time because I run into guys dating, on the dating apps, even though I'm not really on there anymore, but I might get back on soon. Um, who are to constantly what I used to hear is I'm married and my wife doesn't know that hold, hold,
What? That's not poly
so what I used to
that's
hear is I'm married, my wife doesn't know that I'm into trans women. Can I come over? To which I'd be like, hell no. And then I started hearing, probably because a lot of people were like, hell no. Then I started hearing, I'm married. My wife doesn't know that I'm talking to you, but we are ethically non-monogamous from the same guy, like the next week.
a different story.
And I'm like, wait a minute
Oh,
now.
okay, well,
Wait a
that
minute.
shit. No, he
He
got
got
hip.
hip to
He
the
got hip to the
lingo.
lingo and the changes in the time. Yeah,
Honey,
nigga, you ain't slick. Nigga,
please.
you ain't slick.
And then I'm like, you want to be like,
That's a
well, let
lot.
me talk to the wife, Tell your wife to
Yeah,
call me,
tell your wife to
honey.
send me a voice note. I want your wife to send a voice note on the app. Damn it. That's what I want. I want it
What about
now.
you? Well, you
4 days, obviously.
have been in relationships that have multiple opportunities in them. Yeah.
People in the polyfill. Oh yeah, for sure. You know, I don't have a very terribly long dating history. I didn't start dating until I was in my
Mm,
30s.
same.
Um, and I'm now 37. I'll be 38 this
Stop
summer.
bragging.
Um, and so me and my partner were dating for like maybe like 3 years, and then I fell in love with someone else, and I told my partner, and then me and that person started dating, and then I was the hinge, which is where you're the person who's dating two different people who are not dating each other.
Mm,
So I'm dating A and B, but A and
right.
B are not dating each other.
They
They're
know
just
of each
they
other.
know each other. They're maybe they're even friends, you know. And obviously, I've always kept it a buck with everyone that I was dating, and that I have these proclivities. And I will say, like, bringing polyamory into a Black household is wild, because when I would bring partners home for the holiday, and I brought both of them home before, it is a very interesting
I
dynamic in
mean,
my
also
southern
both of your partners,
Black
if I
ass.
may say, were not black, right, at the time. So,
Yeah, I had a Mexican partner who's like indigenous Mexican, and a
mhm.
Jewish
So
partner.
that's
Yeah.
also a thing, you
Uh,
know.
yeah, so there was a lot, there was a lot going
A
on.
lot came home
There's a
for
lot
Christmas.
going on. Yeah, and I mean there was a lot also.
Oh,
One of my partners was also is probably still is trans. I haven't talked to him in a long. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. He's trans. So there
non-black,
there was a
trans, and
there
a
was
bunch
a
of
lot
bunch
happening.
of bunch of queers coming through.
Yeah, there was a lot happening at my Black ass Southern home. Um, but honestly, my family really rose to the occasion quite nicely. I'm really proud of my
Mm,
family, to be
that's
honest.
nice. It's beautiful.
Very, very proud of my beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
Southern family. Very proud of it. You know, on this day, I'm feeling very proud to be Southern. There are days where I'm really
Mm,
not feeling the South, based on a lot of their crazy ass laws, especially what they're doing with rolling back legislation and revolving around
mhm.
birthrights. But on this day, when I think about my family, I'm very
Well,
proud
I know
Southerner.
that they're very proud of you.
So I'm just gonna lean on that one for now.
So, whether you are a poly professional or curious to learn more, join us as we plunge into this thought provoking episode. Get ready to challenge perceptions, expand your understanding, and perhaps even discover something new about yourself along the way.
Now, Marco Diaz, or Saint Marco, is a non-binary award-winning hairstylist, poet, and creative, originally from Brazil. Marco calls Dublin, Ireland, their home now. Marco shares with us how decolonizing their mind and relationships led them to polyamory and a more authentic way of living and loving. So take it away, Marco.
Hi, my name is Marco Diaz. I also go by Saint Marco. Saint Marco came for me as after I came out to myself as non-binary. It's my stage name. I came out as non-binary about 5 years ago. I've navigated and expressed myself in a more feminine way since I was born, but I never understood what this was. And before having before even understanding and knowing the term non-binary, I thought I was trans woman, and that wasn't the case. And then I went back to the closet, and about 5 years ago I just realized that I am neither or, and I just myself and my own energy, and this is how I came out. I'm originally from Brazil, a city called Porto Alegre on this extreme south of Brazil. And at the moment, I live in Dublin, Ireland. 16 years ago, I joined college here and I studied language, and then I ended up doing cosmetology and hair. And yeah, 16 years after, I'm still here. I started living as polyamorous, I'd say about 2.5 years ago. And I was exposed to Black literature during lockdown and COVID here in Ireland. So I joined a Black book club. And through this Black book club, I started to read just, yeah, innumerous books and articles. And I ended up falling into a polyamorous page online and started reading what polyamory was. And then this is how I started identifying as polyamorous as well. Is this indigenous Brazilian artist called Jenny Papos? I read one of her books about polyamory, and it's Descolonizando Afetos, the name of the book, which means decolonizing relationships. My idea of relationship was very Hollywoodian, Disney, that prince would come and save me and I would live happily ever after. That life was for just one relationship. So I come from a Catholic background, and everything that I've been told was the one. I had to choose one relationship. I had to choose one job. I had to choose one profession. So I guess this idea was fed from my parents and all the people around me in the society where I grew up. So before I started polyamory, this was my view. My childhood was I had very happy memories about it, but also very confusing memories because growing up in a very Catholic and sexist and a country, the pressure of being and looking very masculine and acting in a very masculine way was a big pressure. And from my own home, I have memories of my dad not even wanting my brother and I to cross our legs because we would be sitting like women. So it was complicated. But at the same time, my mom was always very accepting and loving and caring. So I was able to express myself or my femininity, let's say, more on her side of the story. So I could experience both situations. I felt free, but also very oppressed at the same time, which can be quite complex. Brazil, it is a colonized country and it still lives under the colonized system up until today. It is documented that we have native communities that would live in a polyamorous way. Because it has been a longer journey for me understanding. Because I did not only decolonize how I think about relationships in my head, but also, about my own gender identification, the way that I live my life. So it's definitely a big connection with my ancestors and ancestry and the native people in Brazil. Leaving Brazil and moving to Dublin, Ireland, gave me the opportunity to restart. So it was easier because nobody knew me. I didn't have the same connections as I had back home, or the same shame, let's say, that I would have for expressing myself and disappointing my parents or disappointing my family. So all of this I didn't have when I first arrived. So it was a lot easier to express myself here, although here is a Catholic country. And once I arrived in Dublin, I was very welcomed, and the queer community here is small, but it's also very accepting. So it helped me a lot to navigate and to express myself more here. My idea of polyamory is not only based in romantic relationship; it's based on any relationship. As I said earlier, is the idea of deconstructing some norms that have been applied and we have been using up until today, or how we relate with each other. So for me, it's about decentralizing the one as whether as a god, whether it is as a god or as a romantic relationship or as a best friend or as so once I started understanding and being more exposed to relationships that were like this was how I started to create my own idea of polyamory. I'm putting myself back in the center place and being the center of, especially when it comes to romantic relationship, my emotions are the ones for me that are most important. And from that point, then I relate with other people with the same respect that I give to myself. I think this is one of the most complicated things to navigate through polyamory. It's understanding where we are and how we communicate. There's even a term called ethical non-monogamy, which I like to use more than polyamory, just because polyamory in some countries can still be a bit sexist or very sexist. Let me put it in this way: that only the male can have multiple partners and not the female. So the ethical non-monogamy, I go better with the term as well because of all this that I just said. Because the idea it's similar but a little bit different. Always being honest, always having open communication, even when the situation is complicated, and always treat people the way that I want to be treated as well, and understand people the way that I want to be understood. When we first met, this person wasn't polyamorous, and because this person lives abroad, doesn't live in Ireland, so we decided to take the chance and see where we could go with it. So the difference with this person was that the person wasn't experienced and also didn't have enough knowledge of what polyamory or ethical non-monogamous relationship could be. And this was the reason why it had to come to an end on my side because it didn't go with my values and with my beliefs as well. And yeah, I started polyamory without being polyamorous, I guess. It sounds a bit confusing, but because I spent 2.5 years at home being exposed to all this knowledge, this new knowledge, and this new way of living, I went on a dating app and I wrote there that I was polyamorous, and I wrote there that I was anti many of the things that are anti me. And when I met this person asked me, "Oh, but what it is, how it is to be polyamorous," and then I just told the person my views and how I see life and everything that I've learned, and this is how we started our relationship. But I can talk about the first time that I felt jealous, and I felt jealousy, and the first experience I had with jealousy. Um, I go to therapy, by the way, so I it's easier for me to navigate throughout my feelings. But when I first um, experienced that, I had hooked up with someone who was a friend of the person that I was seeing, and then I went to a club, and the person that I am seeing. Said to me that a friend was coming. This friend was there, and I didn't get the memo what the friend was. And this friend was another partner. And I saw them kissing for the first time. And I froze. And on that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to run or if I wanted to scream and make a scene. But then I stopped myself and I was like, "You just slept with his friend last night. So what exactly is happening here with your feelings? You're not feeling jealous because you're not, I already deconstructed the idea of possession. And then I realized that because I wasn't being validated by that person, I felt uncomfortable, and I saw them kissing, and it made me feel more uncomfortable. But then, right after they kissed, after a few moments, we had time to talk about it, and our love was validated, and it all, yeah, it's all history now. How I deconstruct the idea of possession is trying to understand the relationship not only just by my own feelings or my own fear, let's say, because vulnerability, fear, and not feeling validated can impact a lot when it comes to polyamory. Because if you're feeling afraid that the person will not love you, if you're not feeling completely confident with the relationship, or if the person is not validating you enough, you will start doubting yourself. So it's about just myself reminding myself of what the relationship is, the promises that we made to each other, and if they are valid and if they're still there, I shouldn't have any problem with it. So because if that person said that loves me but is kissing someone else, that doesn't mean that the person doesn't love me anymore. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through polyamory is to love myself in levels that I didn't even realize that I could love myself, and understanding my feelings, and being able to have open and honest conversation with anyone, not only with a person that I'm having a romantic connection with, but with my work colleagues, or even with the person that I buy bread from. And yeah, this will be the two main things. At the moment, I am living with a flatmate, but two of my romantic connections, they live in Berlin, and the other person was living in England, and this other person, it was the relationship that just ended. In my head, because we don't live in the same city, we don't share moments together. If we were all in the same city, I would like to explore spending some time together. I have met my partner's partners, and it has been very positive. It has been um, more affirming, and also more. It also made it easier to navigate through the relationship because you understand more how the person that you are romantically connecting with, how they are through other people. I do see myself living, um, becoming more mature and live in polyamory, because it doesn't necessarily needs to be a sexual connection. Because I do um, live polyamory through my friends, for example. So I love them in a way, and I deeply connect with them in a way that I think this will take. Yeah, this will go, and we will grow all older together. Yes, but I also at the same time, I have the fear of being alone and being on my own, because we live um, in a such oppressed society where monogamy is the only way of living, that questions in my head sometimes come and creep in, and like, oh, how will you be when you are 50, when you are 60, when you are 70? But I try not to focus on the negative and focus more on the positive. And we queer people, we choose our families, and I think this is what I meant when I said at the beginning that I deconstruct the idea of relationships, because we do have romantic relationships with our friends as well, and that can be forever, that can be longer. Sometimes relationships, friendships are longer than romantic or sexual relationships most of the time. So yes, I try to focus on that idea and not too much on my fears. I just don't allow that voice to take over. The idea it is to have a broad community, just like native people from Brazil. They still live, because we at the moment have over 480 native communities that are still alive in Brazil. So, and they live in the idea of community, and not like the West, or the rest of us live with the idea of the monotheistic idea that everything is just one. No, I don't identify as Catholic. I identify now as a spiritual person, which I've been involved in indigenous healing circles, circles that serve ayahuasca and other Amazonian plants. And this connection with this spirituality has helped me quite a lot to connect more with my ancestry.
Oh, okay, that was good. That was a great way to start this. We are coming with some really good topics and themes this season, thanks to our fabulous production team. Yeah, this isn't something that I would have thought necessarily right off the top of the brain, but this is good. I got to change my thinking.
Even though it is something that I live every day, I guess I also am thinking I don't I guess because it's become so normal for me that I'm just like, and I also have been interested in it. I have a couple of friends who are raising children
Hmm.
in triads, and talking about that process, and they're like, you know, a lot of people acknowledge that being a single parent is hard, and a lot of people acknowledge that having two is still hard. And someone's like, when it's three, it actually makes it a little
Hmm.
bit it actually makes it a little bit easier
What
to
movie
raise
was
a
I
child when there's three
watching?
people um, working around the clock.
I can't remember.
But while you think of that movie, I want to say like it is interesting for us to like think about why is that weird to us? Why do we think it's weird that someone would want to date more than one person? And I hear a lot of people say things like, "I'm too jealous. I'm
Mm,
too jealous," and I'm like, "Well, do you want to foster your jealousy, or do you want to work on making it less? Like, do you want to protect your jealousy, or do you want to work
mhm,
on it?"
mhm.
You know? But also, obviously, I'm not out here spreading paperwork and brochures for polyamory. We're not recruiting. Um, you know? But I think that a lot of people are just kind of waking up to how the Western ideals of love and marriage are don't
They don't
necessarily work for
necessarily
everyone.
work for
I don't think it
everyone.
even works for all people.
Um, it's I do think it's I mean, they work on the surface for certain people, but they don't it doesn't work for everyone. And certainly the way I mean, on the surface, just having, you know, the fact that we're in 2024 and not 1984 means that there's so much about love, romance, and how we connect with people that has changed. We meet people on apps, not in bars, not at like, not necessarily at church, even though there's probably some people that still do. There's a lot more availability. I mean, I think back in the day when your circle of possibility was so much smaller if you only had the neighborhood bar to go to. But now having, something you can swipe and just meet people over and over again, or just like attract them from social media because that feels like a dating app half the time anyway. The game has changed. And so regardless of whether people are supportive of like different types of lifestyles and different, polyamory, whatever they're going to do. Uh, Nobody can deny that like the game has changed. We can't deny that romance and our emphasis on marriage, the emphasis on work outside of marriage, that's all shifted and changed to a point where I think people's priorities are refocusing. And I think people's priorities are focusing more on a sort of self happiness and understanding that that isn't necessarily tied to the traditional, idea of marriage and relationship. And so, I think of especially I was watching a video just the other day by a black queer activist in the community, and and he was talking about. I'm sorry, they were talking about. I think they use they and he pronouns. Was talking about cis black women, and sort of like the some of the conversation that had been going on around black trans women and saying that like according to like the traditional like colonial definition of womanhood, black women who were formerly enslaved didn't fit into the definition of woman either. The definition of like the social sort of um you know agreement definition of woman, not female but woman, was meant for white women in our country, you know um and
Yeah.
and black women, black people were not seen as humans, and black women were not seen as human women either. They were seen as look like the female version of the beast. And that sounds terrible. That's not what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that's what
I think I understand that this is not your sentiment, but it's the sentiment of it's a
exactly.
symptom of the
And
times,
so
but not your
that's how we were viewed. And so it's really interesting to see that obviously post slavery, and this is getting off into something different, but like how we latch on to the things that we were given from by our colonizers, the religion, the sort of traditional nuclear family model of like one man, one woman in a so I do think that certainly in other cultures there polyamory is certainly not new, but in the Western world, it is something that we're thinking about.
yeah.
We're destigmatizing.
And polyamory is hard to shake. Not poly religion is hard to shake. I'll say that religion, not polyamory, religion is hard to
Mhm.
shake. Um, and also the last thing I'll say about it too is, it's really interesting to me when you think about the progression of who is considered a woman um, and who is considered what. I do want to say, just from a historical, anagrammatical place, something that kind of like irks me when I realize is like, a lot of people, there's been an unearthing recently, not recently, but that says that, Sojourner Truth never said "and I a woman." That wasn't actually what she said in
Oh,
her.
I heard.
Apparently, her, her speech was actually much more grammatically correct because her native language was actually Danish, and she learned English because she was surrounded by Danish speakers. So Sojourner Truth wasn't up there going anti-woman. By the way, there's obviously nothing wrong with any person who speaks that way or who spoke that way at the time. It's just not how she spoke at the time. They were like, well, because some white lady was like, black folks aren't gonna want to connect with this black lady with a Danish accent. So I think what's going on is like when we realize that two things about the context of who is considered a woman and when or not. Sojourner's anti-truth woman is often Sojourner Truth's anti-truth speech is often quoted in this context, in the considering of Black women to be women and Black people to be people. But Sojourner Truth actually never said that. She never said anti-woman. A white activist, a white abolitionist later added it to the speech and reprinting it like 13, 12 years later, being like, this don't sound Black enough. And the Black folks ain't gonna want to listen to it, and the white folks ain't gonna sympathize with it if when it's this perfect English speaking Black woman with a Danish accent. We want to hear some nigga shit. So make her say, ain't I a woman? Ain't I a woman?
no.
And also on a grammatical note, which I don't know why it drives me crazy. Anyone there who calls women females, just for the, I know it's pedantic, but female is an adjective, it's not a noun. You can be female, but you can't be a female. You can so like a person is female, but a person is not it's like calling someone a pretty versus calling them pretty. She is pretty.
Listen,
She is not a pretty.
language, it's incorrect, but language does shift, and people colloquially just have been using that for a long time.
It is true, but also people who use it that way is
It
low-key
is
a
a
red
red
flag. If you
flag.
call women female, if you call women females, and yes, we are people colloquially, I understand what they're saying, and I'm not saying that you are a person who is incredibly misogynistic.
It's giving
but
misogyny.
it gives off misogyny.
It's giving misogyny.
When you say
I me and my females,
it's sending a signal to us. It tells us how you feel about women.
It also doesn't really acknowledge their humanity and their contribution. A female really is like referring to someone's female as female really only highlights and really acknowledges their anatomy and their possible ability, like their anatomy and how it functions for the purposes of either sex or reproduction, and that it doesn't really acknowledge who they are as a female, like someone who's female. If you're saying a female, could be anybody, someone who's a young girl, someone who is a grandmother, someone who's a woman. Like it doesn't really. It could be a dog. Yeah, I bring a female in here. Could be anything, but bring a woman or a human being in here. Not that you want to be going and getting them, but like that really does, it just opens up a little bit more of their humanity and allows to see like who they are. And it just, when you refer to women or your wife or your partner as a female, it really just tells us that that role that they're serving is interchangeable with any other quote female, and that's
with
just
the
as
dog,
long as it has a vagina,
with the cat.
You know what I mean? And that's I'm not saying that, I'm not connecting, vaginas and vaginal functions with woman or female. I'm not making that exclusive, but I'm saying that like that seems to be the mindset, is that someone who refers to their wife or their partner who's a woman as a female, that means that they're interchangeable. And the only thing that connects one female to the next is that possibly their anatomy and their bodily function. Anyway.
Yeah. And it says less about your identity than it does about
let's
your
move on.
Anyways,
we get on, honey. We go deep in this show. Okay, it's time to talk about to welcome our next guest.
Awesome.
Ian Field Stewart is a multi-hyphenate creative working in the intersection of art, activism, and pleasure. Their work spans many fields, no pun intended, including theater, film, dance, writing, arts, administration, and social justice. She is dedicated to creating art, facilitating spaces, and influencing organizational practices that allow Black, queer, and trans people to radically luxuriate in our own joy. To put this simply, she wants to make their people feel good. Ian breaks down the logistics of seeing multiple romantic partners and shares with us an important message on living without shame.
My name is Ian Field Stewart. I use they, them, she, her pronouns. I first learned about polyamory when I read an article about a gay, white, cis, I'm assuming, polyamorous couple. I was really struck by the the fact that everyone seemed to have a role that they were filling and that they got to do what they were best at in support of the larger community. I'm a community minded girl, and so that really spoke to me. And I thought, oh, interesting, love in community. I really like that. And then I would say in 2019, end of 2019, maybe 2020, uh, like named polyamory as something that I wanted to identify as and a way that I wanted to date moving forward. Um, there was a bit of a pandemic, not sure if you're aware, um, but that sort of slowed my dating opportunities in that way. And yeah, but now I'm in a polyamorous relationship. I have a forever thing. I have a boyfriend, and then I have a lover. And uh, each of us is in a relationship with each other. We're not in a relationship together, but everyone knows and is friendly and friends with everyone. The first time I read that article, it was the first time I had encountered anything like that. It was, I was very much a lover girl, and I still pretty much am. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Uh, I guess I just have a few more sleeves than I thought I did. I think that like that article introduced the idea of a structure, an idea that, hey, there's a way to be in relationship to people that allows you to be the best part of yourself. Um, I obviously didn't connect to the identities I was reading about, and so I think that's why I didn't necessarily link it to myself. But it was just something that over the years I would just have in the back of my mind. Oh yeah, there was that article that I read, and I really, it would be that thing that I would return to, and it wasn't necessarily like this isn't me, but it's just interesting, and I think about it. And then it was eventually like, okay, you're thinking about it a lot, you know. And then I think it was when I watched Sense8, if you remember that show, which is not about polyamory, but felt very polyamory-ish. And I think what again, sort of experiencing a show that was portraying love in community. Love is accessible in many different ways, and many different ways to be in love with many different people. That really spoke to me and excited me. As far as other pieces of media that I was consuming, there wasn't anything really as mainstream as Sense8 or that article that I was reading. Um, Honestly, uh, it was just I haven't really like had too many models that I've followed. There have been, I've attended play parties and I've been in the kink scene, and so in that way, I've sort of met different people who speak about polyamory a lot, but also being a trans woman and being a black trans woman and a black non-binary trans woman, I haven't found too many experiences beyond just sort of personal accounts and meeting people in community who are in polyamorous relationships. But the structure, I feel like offers us a pretty wide umbrella of like opportunities of what different relationships can look like. Ultimately, I've always been someone who it's like if you plant just like the tiniest little seed in my brain, I can usually make something grow out of that. And I think that's a lot of what polyamory was for me. It was like just planting these various seeds about like this is something that excites you, and if it excites you, you can lean into it, because there's probably pleasure on the other side of that. I talk about it very openly, very easily. I say I have a forever thing. This is their name. These are their pronouns. I have a boyfriend. This is their name. This is their pronouns. I have a lover. This is the, you know, um, and the rest of it is like I'm figuring it out just like I would any other relationship. Um, I'm honest about what's going on. Have, I try to make opportunities for everyone to come together so that, listen, I'm talking to everybody about everything. So these people are part of like my community of love. And therefore, when I'm navigating various issues, like I want you to know the people I'm going to or who are helping me figure this out, because every one of us can trust each other because we all know each other. Y'all have each other's information. If you want to talk, if you want to say Ian ain't shit, go and say Ian ain't shit, but do it over there. You know how to talk to each other. You're grown people. We all grown here. So I think, for me, it's just been about talking openly and honestly, making sure that everyone knows what's going on and doing the best we can to kind of say when feelings that are comfortable come up, when feelings that are uncomfortable come up, and everything else in between and beyond. I think that there have been times where I thought something would be okay and it wasn't. Um, I think there have been times that someone thought something was going to be okay and it wasn't. But honestly, it's not. There has really been no drama. I say about my relationship with my forever thing that our relationship is the composite of all my best choices. And that's specific to us, but I think in general, polyamory is the composite of my best choices. I feel happy in this arrangement. I feel pleased. I feel at home. And, you know, my partners tell me they're happy. They seem happy. I'm happy. We're not hurting anybody. So I think that what tends to happen when I experience jealousy, um, I don't experience it a lot, but when I do, I'm like, ooh, that's not a feeling I feel very often. Where's that coming from? And so I tend to spend more time trying to uncover what's underneath the jealousy rather than I try to spend time addressing the person for making me feel jealous, if that makes sense. Like I don't really think of myself as a jealous person. I don't really think of myself as having a strong relationship to jealousy. And so when it is an emotion that comes up, if I take time to actually uncover what it is, it tends to be about, well, no, actually, it's not necessarily that I'm jealous because jealousy would mean that I wanted to take this away from you. That's not what I'm feeling. But I am feeling neglected. I don't have an issue with you seeing other people. I have an issue with you seeing that person. Or and there may be very specific reasons for that, and I probably will get over those very specific reasons. More often than not, I do. But there is it's not generally about like jealousy as in I want something that I want to take something from you. I think jealousy for me is an indicator. It's sort of a broad stroke emotion that indicates to me something deeper is going on. Like, oh, I'm feeling insecure, or I'm feeling lesser than, or I'm not feeling like I'm enough. And that's something that I can address. And so I prefer to address that. So I do feel jealousy, but I try to use it as a compass back to myself rather than as a way to control or assert power over anybody else. When I'm feeling jealousy, I try to breathe. I try to take a step back from the situation emotionally and even sometimes physically, and to do sort of a scan of my body, a scan of my emotions, and kind of say like, what's really going on, girl? Because this ain't something you normally do. So it's just sort of a general scan of everything and figuring out what's going on. Making this happen logistically is a lot of Google Calendars, um, or just Google Calendar events. I live my life on a Google Calendar. Um, I cohabitate with my forever thing, and so and yet we seem to be the people we seem to see each other the least of my partners. But every week I just try to make sure I've seen someone at least once or twice. I'm a very like I want lots of quality time, so it feels very natural. Um, but yeah, I mean, it means a lot of. I've sometimes said that I like finding people who amplify my alone time. And what I mean by that is that it's like when I'm alone with you, I can still feel like I'm at my center. I can still feel like I'm at my core. And I can still feel like while I am not alone, I don't feel like I'm losing out on like time where I could be spending with myself. I feel like there's a flexibility and fluidity to where there are times that we're being intimate together and some, romantically, not romantically. There are times that we're sharing space. There are just times that like you're in the room and I'm in the room and we are just sort of coexisting and that feels important. I just find that anytime I'm feeling like nervous to say something, that's the time that I try to rush to say it because normally that's the thing that really needs to be said. Um, and so I try not to let myself like hold anything in too long. I just try to get right to it and say what it is. Um, Other principles, make sure that everyone has a voice and how they want this to go. What one of my partners is very introverted and really enjoys being inside. Does not enjoy, going out and doing all of my extroverted stuff. Um, and yeah, so I just, I told them I promise not to let my young people shit mess with your old people shit. So if you need to be old inside, let's go and be old inside together. And so we develop traditions and rituals. I think that's another value I feel like I have is like having traditions and rituals that I return to with each person so that like when we come together, there's a groundedness to it. Like me and my boyfriend love to sit on their stoop and just like watch the world go by. So we'll like wake up, have a morning coffee, and just sit on the stoop together and watch the world go by. And I'm a girl from the South, so for me, it's like sitting on the porch and it's everything. And so that, and that speaks to a part of me and a part of like how I feel good and and also what makes them feel good. Um, my forever thing and I like to take long, we're both kind of adventurous and travel minded. And so we like to just, take long walks throughout the city, like starting like, on Lincoln Center and going all the way down to like lower Manhattan and just wandering through the city and talking and not talking and taking in the world around us. My lover really loves movies. So going to movies is a thing for us. It's like just find the different pieces and parts that when we do them together, it feels like home. It kind of looks the same as it would if I was single, I'll be honest. Um, just that in that I'm moving with autonomy. In that it's like if a connection is formed, it's an organic connection and it's honest, then yeah. I'll be honest, like all my partners know I'm a bit of a slut. So like that's why they like me. So so like me being slutty is very much just a part of like my personality. I'm very slutty with them and it's just a matter of when I'm out doing my extroverted shit, it probably means that I'm just being slutty with somebody else. Um, or not. I can also just go out and have fun, but you know, but yeah, I think that it's. I mean, I tell people up front, like, okay, well, if you're looking for a deeper connection, great, but sometimes a connection for the night is a connection for the night, or a flirtation. I would say that as I have found as my like pool of my community of love has grown, or my constellation, I should say. That's what me and my boyfriend call it, a constellation. I always have loved that because it's like I feel like I provide the canvas, my life provides the canvas, and then all of my partners are various stars, and I draw the line between them, and that makes our relationship. So that's how I like to think about it. But for me, it's like some of these will just be a star, but sometimes it's just a star that happens in the night, and sometimes it's a flirtation. I found that, as I was saying, as my constellation has grown, I find that I am much slower to physical things with new people, and also the time in general just takes a little bit longer to develop a connection with somebody because I'm like, girl, if you're gonna come into this, that's a lot. Listen, we gotta schedule here. There's a lot of Google calendaring that has to be done. So so I think it actually has helped me to be more discerning in my dating life because I can enjoy new connections and I can enjoy being enjoyed and I can flirt and I can have fun. And maybe it's like, we develop a flirtatious, like texting relationship that I will show to all of my partners and laugh and giggle. Um, but it's just fun. It's just fun and easy. I think that, a lot of queer friends that I have, we often talk about having, a pod together, or just like that utopian future of going and like getting property and land and building a home and living amongst a bunch of beautiful queer people, and we wake up every morning and sing songs and make our own food. uh I've heard that utopia many times, and so I'm sure that that's kind of like where what that would essentially look like. But I don't personally have the experience. So much of some of my, I feel like, core beliefs, especially as we are experiencing the ravages of genocide, especially as we are experiencing the continued, like, attempting to legislate trans people out of existence as we continue to, right? As all of these things go on, I find myself when I talk about like what my values are to my core, both political and personal and social and all of these things, right? That these values essentially are bringing me back to a way of living in a village, a way of living in a community where you can walk to everything you need. And I think that queer and trans people in general are this sort of I think we have a spirit about us again because I've never had a conversation with queer people where that utopia of living on a commune essentially with a bunch of trans and queer people wasn't spoken about. I think that we naturally have a calling as queer people to be like we continuously are going to get pushed out, and especially when we are black and brown, it's like to have spaces that are our own, that exist outside of a society of dominant norms, I think is feels really natural. And so I think that's why polyamory feels so natural to me because it it's just it's not asking anyone to be everything to me. I can't be everything to one person. I don't want you to be everything to me. That intimidates and frightens me, if I'm honest, because I know how fallible I am. I know how human I am, and I can't be everything to you, but I can be all of me. And I can be in a close relationship with myself, and I can continue to say, girl, here's what it is today. If you still choose this, fantastic. I still choose this. And as long as that works for you, then baby, we gonna have a good time. But you know, I think I spend a lot of my life growing up thinking of, you know, wanting to be Brandy and in Whitney Houston Cinderella. You know, I wanted Prince Charming, and I wanted to have the fantasy, you know. Um, and the more I lived in the real world, and the more I like got my heart broken, and the first time that I realized that I'd given more of myself away than I meant to, and the second I gave my power away to somebody, I just slowly started realizing that I was like, this is really this way of just being in relationship to one person. I'm craving things from myself and from them that I don't think are realistic. I don't think this person can be everything to me, and I don't want to feel disappointed when this person is human, nor do I want them to feel disappointed in me when I'm human. I would rather, be able to say, baby, if all it is that you need a little something else that I can't give you, then baby, you go get that, and then you bring your ass right back home. Stop playing. I like to set the table for people to come in and feel like, okay, here, I can be safe, I can sit down, I can be myself, I can have good conversation, good food, good music, and a warm energy and feel at home. So I think that that's something that I create for myself, and I think that reverberates out to the people I pull close to me. I am uh, deeply in love with care and rest and a hint of luxury, and not luxury in the sense of superiority and hierarchy, but luxury in the sense of like I get to luxuriate in pleasure, I get to luxuriate in peace, I get to luxuriate in quiet, or I get to luxuriate in being loud and big and boisterous and queer as hell and trans as hell, but just the ability to luxuriate in myself, in all of myself. I like to think that I create a table where people can sit and luxuriate in themselves and enjoy other people luxuriating in themselves as well. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and I have always been the doll. So I sometimes talk about myself as having been born in a living room. So there was never the closet was never really an option for me, and so I don't I don't have shame in being who I am because I know when I've hurt someone and I know when I haven't. Um, I know when I've done something wrong and I know when I haven't. Me being myself is just not wrong. So I think that uh, to that teenager, I would say the thing that let me walk through my life safely, as I experienced quite a bit coming in from the outside, was that I always knew they were in the wrong, and it stopped me from trying to blame myself. Uh, I just I think that we can trust ourselves a lot more to know what right and wrong is. And the reality is that what is right and wrong is a lot more subjective than we would like to believe. It's very frightening to live in a world of gray areas and subjectivity. I myself don't like it that much, so I try to, create as much certainty as I can in a very uncertain world. And I understand the instinct for that, but I know how to provide myself certainty without stamping on someone else's existence to do so. Um, I'm not hurting anybody by loving multiple people at the same time and letting multiple people love me. Um, I promise you, none of my partners are hurting. Um, so, if they're happy and I'm happy, if we continue to make the choice, um, whatever that is that we're doing, don't feel ashamed. Like feel shame over the things that you should feel ashamed of. There are some things you did wrong. Girl, you know what it is. You know, you told your mama that she was not at that boy's house, and you was at that boy's house. And maybe you could be okay. Maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. That wasn't, that wasn't right. That wasn't right. Maybe that's what you need to talk about, or maybe it's that you said you didn't do that thing, and you know you did that thing. Maybe that's something you can feel ashamed of, or maybe you hurt someone when you could because you were feeling insecure. That's something you can feel ashamed of. If you support genocide, you should feel shame over that. You know, those are things you should feel ashamed of. If you have the power to change our world for the better, if you are one of those few people who are in a position of power and you can change the world we live in like that, and you choose not to, you should be ashamed. I should not be ashamed that I have 3 people that can say that they love me and I love them. I'm not ashamed of that.
That was Ian Phil Stewart, and you can see her on Instagram at the free actorvist. That's like activist with an actor, the free actorvist, and on TikTok at lesbian lover, but it's L-U. Actually, this is all spelled wild. LESBIANNELUVR. Uh, I mean, that was a really obviously a really insightful take on polyamory. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, it's great to be able to see obviously it's great to be able to hear some Black queer voices talking about polyamory because it's really interesting. We've been taught and all as Westerners and certainly as Americans fed this sort of ideal of like one of marriage, not necessarily one man, one woman, only because now we do have marriage equality as legal. But for for those of us who are adults and probably even teenagers, we certainly remember a time when it wasn't, right? And so culturally, heteronormative marriages and relationships were the only thing that have been like taught and fostered throughout our lives and in terms of our learning systems and things like that. And so we haven't necessarily been given a golden ticket invitation as Black queer folks into any of that anyway. And so it only makes sense that we are thinking of relationships outside of that box because we weren't invited into that box. And so having, different ways of
true.
dating and different ways of finding love is something that we've always had to do. So it just makes sense that we're able to kind of bring that intersection to our podcast.
Yeah, I agree. And me and Pepper always have. Well, I think I can speak for Pep when I say this. We're always happy to have many different voices on our podcast, and we're so grateful for everyone who listens. And I want to remind you all, if you stuck around this long, if you're on iTunes, please give us a review. Give us 5 stars and a review. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. Engage with us. Tell us your thoughts and your experience with polyamory, and also ideas for subjects you would want us to engage with in the future. You know. Town Hall Black Queer Podcast is pulling full steam ahead, and the end is not in sight. So hop on the train and let us conduct this all the way to some
I think
motherfucking
it's
liberation, man.
important to note that we now stop at every station every week. Okay, I try to pull the train thing, but we do weekly
Yeah,
stops. That's the point. In the meantime, special thank you. We're going
we're
local. We're going
going local.
local.
We're going local
Special
now.
thanks to our production team, executive producer Tracy Marquez, senior producer Charlene Westbrook, producer Corey Nixon, and post producer Amelia Rittaler. Music by LaFemme Bear. Episode 2 part 2 of our 3rd episode, which is on polyamory, airs next week. So make sure you tune in for that. In the meantime, thanks everybody.